For years, the government has worked behind the scenes to shape public behavior and opinions without people realizing it. A journalist, Tom O'Neill, broke down how the government has been using different methods in order to control the masses. He claims it started off as Project Bluebird, then eventually morphed into MK Ultra. Check this out.
So you brought up MK Ultra.
Yes.
MK Ultra was a government program run by the Central Intelligence Agency. Originally started as something called Bluebird in 1948-49, morphed into Artichoke, and then in 1952 became MK Ultra. It was a mind control program, a brainwashing program. The CIA was trying to learn how to control people's behavior without their knowledge. Now, this all came out in Senate and congressional hearings in the 70s. It was exposed, but nobody knew about it until 1974 when Seymour Hersh, the New York Times reporter, reported it on the front page of the paper.
Many people are unaware of how strongly the government has tried to shape our beliefs to match their own agenda. It's all about controlling us to do what they want us to do, to think how they want us to think. Tom said that a reporter exposed this years ago, but it got swept under the rug. The whole idea never went away. It's just disguised as something else now. The government explained exactly what they intended to accomplish when they launched this program. Check this out.
So their main objective was to create what they called hypno-programmed assassins, people who would kill on command, popularly known as Manchurian candidates, after a book that was written in 1962 and later became a movie and then a movie again. The people would be, through drugs and hypnotism, the objective was to get people to go and commit an act of murder against their moral code and have no memory of their programming. And be amnesic even of the act after the fact often. That was just that was their main goal, but they were also trying to create couriers, people, military people that they could implant messages, send them, across dangerous areas where there were, at that time it was the Vietnam War.
So as we just heard, they made it seem like this program was harmless to civilians and only used to help with military agendas, but it goes much deeper than the surface level lies they want us to believe. Tom O'Neill talks about the guy who wrote the first book about MK Ultra and explains why he stopped doing interviews. Check this out.
Testifying to Congress and working with Seymour Hersh to expose it was named John Marks. He wrote the first book about MK Ultra that came out in the mid to late 70s called The Search for the Manchurian Candidate. And after he wrote his book, he never, he spoke, did a little bit of a tour, and then retreated into obscurity and never would do an interview again until I approached him in the early 2000s. And when I told him what I had found in West's files, these documents, he agreed to meet with me at his townhouse in Washington, D.C. And he told me, he said, the reason I stopped talking or writing about this was people were camping out on my front lawn, telling me that they'd been victims of MK Ultra. He goes, I couldn't go anywhere. My whole life became crazy because everybody thought that they were subject to this because nobody knew. They did these drug tests on prisoners, hospital patients, Johns, hippies, people that had no idea that this was going on for 25 years. So Marx became the authority. So he had never given an interview till he met with me. And when he looked at my documents, at that point, I think I had about 10 or 12 or 15 pages that grew eventually because I kept going back to the files and getting more. He said it was the most unredacted, uncensored account of what the real objectives were and what was really being done. He said if I had had that, my whole book would have been different. That's one of the problems about saying, well, how much did they do or how far did they go? There's barely any record, and that's another reason it took me 20 years, because I was trying to find out whether or not Wes had actually...
There's just so much to unpack here, but the main takeaway is that we would never know how much horrible things were done to those victims back then, but we do know that the brainwashing and mind control still lives in our society today. When something happens nowadays and people speculate, they are often labeled a conspiracy theorist. The government can burn all the records they want, but God sees all things and we reap what we sow.